Okay.
Yeah.
Children. So my son, very smart, finished college in 2 years instead of 4, got 4 master's degree, graduated, and after that he couldn't find a job for a while. And I was wondering, he is the one who has to get a job. He is so beautiful and everything. When I started,
Can you hear her? Get closer and talk louder.
When I started talking to him about it, and he's not into Abraham at all, so I had to find a way how to open him up pretty much. So he said that
You don't have to open him up to Abraham. You just have to use what you know about alignment when you interface with him. In other words, you'll be inspired to the perfect thing. You don't have to drag him into all of this.
no, I actually wanted to find out what is it.
Do you teach gravity to your children? Now, kids, when you go outside, you're not ever going to fall up. Now, I want you to write that 100 times. You're always going to fall down. When you throw things up, they're always going to come down. It's just something that they figure out pretty fast, don't they? Yeah.
Yes. So I wanted to understand, why isn't he getting the job?
Why isn't he doing what you think he needs to do? Why isn't he doing what, by your perspective, is the thing that he should be doing next?
He wanted that too. He really wanted it, but he wouldn't get it. And I started worrying, and I started, what is the bottom?
Well,
Why?
so let us ask you, we're asking all of you, but when you really want something and you don't get it, what happens to your desire?
It's getting bigger.
And so now that it's bigger and you don't get it, what happens to your desire?
It's getting bigger.
And when you don't get it, what happens to your desire? So it gets bigger
Still
and
bigger,
bigger
yeah.
and bigger. And then in a moment of confusion, when you're not in a state of resistance,
That's exactly what
you
happened.
allow what you want to come. Now, it's a harder way of going about it, but it's what most everybody's doing in one way or another, you see. So from what you know about power of influence, from what you know about alignment, what is your path of least resistance relative to your son?
I had to cut the cord and let him be.
You can't cut the cord. You can't. We're not asking you to cease your desires for him. We're asking you to line up with your desires for him.
For myself.
And this conversation, you were not doing that. In this conversation, you were amplifying something that made you feel uncomfortable, yes?
Not anymore. It's actually a happy ending story. It was just the beginning.
So you tortured us unnecessarily? You do that to each other, too.
Yes.
So tell us the happy ending.
The happy ending is that when he graduated and he got his master's, I bought him a trip to Hawaii for some relatively spiritual seminar. And I thought, okay, I'll just give it to him and see what happens. He might not even go there. He might just skip the whole thing. But I'm like, oh, I'll give it to him anyway. So he went there. And the seminars were from 7 a.m. to like 6 p.m., so he wouldn't even see any Hawaii. He would be just in the seminar all day long. And he went. And he met this wonderful girl, a Peruvian lady. She's a little older. And they just fell in love. She's from New York, so he's coming home. He's saying, she's moving in with me. So she moves in. They're so in love. They're having sex like crazy. And I think that's what made the job came just right away. Now they're living in the house, and he just bought his new car, and everything is just went into the place in a 2 weeks period. And I'm thinking, how can it be? 2 years he couldn't find anything, and now all of a sudden everything? And
because alignment trumps everything.
Yeah.
And if you can stop placing conditions on how alignment is achieved, you want your children to get their alignment, but you want them to get it in the way that you're prescribing it sometimes. And sometimes they find it in another way, because the source within them knows the path of least resistance for them, you see. So cutting the ties just means allowing them to follow their own guidance and trusting that how they're going to figure it out if they do not have an opportunity to experience it. Yes?
Yes. And
So is there anything about this that is not utterly clear to you now?
That's what I wanted to make sure of. So this was because he fell in love and he stopped worrying about not having a job, not having a money, not having a car. He just went for love and for sex, and that's what made it, right?
Found alignment.
Found alignment. Yeah.
Found
in the
alignment.
moment.
Found alignment. Found alignment.
And I was a cooperative
Getting back to
component to it,
basics.
right?
Say again?
I said I was a cooperative component to it because I wanted him to be successful so much. And I mean, if not me, he would never meet her, right? It was me.
Well, certainly your inspiration is part of it, yes. But for most parents, you can give yourself the title of cooperative component and uncooperative component a lot of the time. You can tell by the way you feel. In this conversation alone, there were worrisome parts, there were parts where you were pushing against. So what do you think happened to really change your perspective? It's a trap, so be careful. When you really started feeling good was after things unfolded and the condition changed for him. In other words, that's when you really started feeling good. So you're still living a sort of conditional response to the success that he's finding.
Yeah.
You're going to have a much more joyful opportunity as you move forward to not need to wait for somebody else to get it figured out before you start feeling good. You can really be of value to others if you stand in a general place. I know who you are, son, and I know that it will work out well for you. And I'm so proud of everything that you've accomplished, and I know that you will find your way. And I'm so eager about the way your life unfolds. There's so much wonderful stuff that's ahead of you. And I feel ease and joy when I think about you because I can just feel that your future is shining and bright because I know who you are. You practiced yourself into your alignment, not needing things to change in order for you to feel good. You're getting this, aren't you? You don't have to have the rough ride. And the less rough of a ride that you have with the others that you feel about, the better it will be for them because you will be demonstrating your alignment regardless of what they are currently experiencing. To have an unemployed son or an employed son, which do you choose? Well, I choose an employed son because he'll be prosperous and he'll be able to do more things that he wants to do, and there may be less for me to take care of and so forth. So that's pretty clear. But then ask yourself, what's the path of least resistance? What's the path of least resistance? Can you demand that he be employed? Son, go be employed and then come back. Can you demand that he be employed?
I did. Until I got the court.
Can you demand someone into the condition that they need to be in so that you can feel better? Is that really your path of least resistance?
No.
Oh, that makes you so tired as you make your demands and you set your rules and you set your laws and you drop your bombs and trying to get people to comply. But the path of least resistance, what's the path of least resistance? To worry about your son or to trust him? What's the path of least resistance?
Trust.
What's the path of least resistance? To need it to change right now or to accept that everything is unfolding? What's the path of least resistance? To live his life for him even though he's doing everything in his power to keep you from doing that? Or to let him live his own life? What's the path of least resistance? And what you begin to discover is the path of least resistance will never let you down. It will never misguide you because your source energy is always firmly upon your path of least resistance. Ooh, that's worth knowing. So since your inner being is already there, and why? Why is your inner being always on your path of least resistance? Because your inner being knows everything that's in the vortex, is focused upon it completely, knows where you stand in vibrational relationship to it. Your inner being is always on your path of least resistance. You can trust that, you see. So when you're trying to find the thought that feels best, the mood that feels best, the opinion that feels best, the attitude that feels best, So where do you get the attitudes that don't feel good? Oh, my son is unemployed. Well, you know what that means. He'll just get used to not being employed, and then he'll just want to live off you forever and ever and ever. That feels awful, and it isn't even true. You're just making it up and throwing it on your trail and preventing yourself from feeling good and preventing yourself from the intuitive thought and the demonstration of alignment that would benefit your son. Ooh, that was really good. Did you get that? Yeah. Enough?
So, no. That's what I wanted to say. I actually learned for myself. It was a surprise for me how fast everything unfolded for him. And I'm thinking, I don't really have to worry. He will get that.
Yes, he will. But here's another question that we want to put to you. So eventually, and we sort of talked about this in the beginning, eventually, the path of least resistance shows itself. In other words, Esther had such an epiphany the other day because she has said, I shine in a crisis because the crisis makes me focus and so forth. And so then she was thinking about this path of least resistance. So do you want to take the path of least resistance or the path of most resistance? Well, if you want it to be the path of most resistance, then just keep not doing things that you keep feeling like you should do until that path of least resistance just has more and more and more and more resistance in it. That's why you want to start early. Get yourself into a good feeling place and follow the impulse. Jerry would say to Esther, you know, we're going to do this because it's something that we've agreed to do. So since we've agreed to do it, why not do it now when we have the ease and leeway to do it? Why put ourselves in a corner where we're limited on time and then do it? And there's something in this that we want you to feel around that. Here it is. Once you've given birth to the desire, you've set your trajectory in motion. And unless you line up with it, you're going to feel resistance. Because you can't pull back from what you've become. You can't be less than who you have become. And so, holding back from who you have become is what resistance is. So just play with this for the next few days. Watch yourself and ask yourself this question on a really regular basis. Is this the path of least resistance? And then remind yourself, alignment trumps everything. And the path of least resistance will lead me to alignment. And then everything follows from there. Clear?
Yes.
Enough?
Back to cats and dogs?
Enough.
Dogs.
All is well. And do you know why? Because that was not the path of least resistance. And do you know why that was not the path of least resistance? We'll wait until you're hearing us. The reason is because that was not the path of least resistance. And the reason it was not the path of least resistance is because there are a lot of people that want to talk about a lot of things. And so even though it is something that we could talk about, it was not the path of least resistance. You follow what we are getting at?